Don't be intimidated. It's just a new form of tech. And remember, you are running your company. You are the people that know your business the best. Spend some time either getting assessment of your team or wherever to figure out where are you really in the AI or the data level to be a competitive weapon, not just be information anymore, because your competition is looking at it like a competitive weapon. That's happening. And somebody is going to win in your industry or in your business because they are a step ahead of understanding how AI can be used.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. Barb, did you have any questions before we get started?
No, I think they were really good. I actually went through, and these are great questions, by the way, because you realize how much you actually execute. And I found some areas that we think we do, but we don't.
Oh, yes.
So, it was interesting, and this is great. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. So thank you. I'm honored.
Likewise. It's so good to have you on the show, Barb. The other thing I want to make sure, we're just fresh back from HubSpot's big annual inbound event.
How was it? I cannot wait to talk to the two of you about it.
Yes, and it was amazing. And of course, you and I have had conversations in the past about AI. And if you think back, like let's say you and I had a conversation 6 months ago about how AI is going to be used in our businesses and in our clients' businesses. Even 6 months ago, the stuff we talked about seems kind of
dated,
old,
right?
dated, yeah. And no surprise, but so HubSpot, they launched their new AI product last week, which now is so they've been building AI into the product for the last 2 years, but they've now named it. It's called Breeze.
Okay.
So it's because it's very their whole tagline is HubSpot is easy, fast, and unified. And that's obviously they're speaking in relative to their competition in the form of Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, that they're easier to use, faster to implement, and unified versus cobbling together multiple different technologies. The launch of AI as a separate brand called Breeze. So there's Breeze Copilot, Breeze Intelligence. So yeah, a lot of really cool things to come.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, and of course, one of the realizations, and I actually just posted this on LinkedIn a little bit ago. One of the biggest takeaways, and actually one of our team, Emily, did a deep dive session at Inbound last week called Garbage In, Garbage Out, which of course is all about clean data, and it was incredibly well received. And of course, it's no surprise because with AI, if we didn't really realize it, not having clean and organized data is going to be more important than ever.
Absolutely. And that was, I don't know if I should say this in here, but one of the questions about the tools we've used and some learnings on it is you don't always have to get what is perceived the lead marketplace applications. Lots of times they actually can be, you need to know your age and stage and what fits you, right? And then the example I was going to give is like a Salesforce versus HubSpot or those types of things. And as a mid-cap sized company, we went with brand name, and the complexity just ate us alive, right? And we're in AI, and we know the right questions to ask. But we just between you and I, the Salesforce experience was a lot of money and just about killed us, right? It was just all productivity went down. We had massive challenges. And then we actually stood back and reevaluated and say, this might make sense for Hewlett Packard or Oracle or Cisco. It sure didn't make sense for Timaron, right? And moving over to HubSpot was like a breath of fresh air, was what I was going to say, fits in with Breeze. But is that the type of learning that's okay to talk about in this environment? Like, can I actually explain that?
Well, in fact, we're recording now. So, everything we've talked about so far, we are things we're willing to share and able to share. You just need to tell us if there's anything that you don't want to share.
Yeah, no, no, no. I definitely do. I mean, like to your point, it's a continuous learning. And I wish somebody had brought up the agent stage to me before I spent the money.
Yeah, we made the same mistake.
Did you really? Yeah.
Yeah, we bought Salesforce in 2013, and of course the Salesforce rep was very happy to sell us the software without telling us that we would then also have to buy the services to actually properly implement and customize it for us.
Or the other 20 little tag-ins that had to come with it to make it do the thing you wanted for it. I agree. It was a big shock for sure.
So other than the fact that it was unwieldy and very way too complicated for the stage that we were at, on the other end of the spectrum it was a terrible customer experience, right? And we hear this a lot, and so I wasn't surprised now when you shared that with me. We've heard the same story so many times, and in many cases it's companies that were just too small, like you were saying, age and stage. With And the reality is that for most companies that have under 1,000 employees, they no longer need something as complicated as Salesforce or Dynamics. But of course, but HubSpot wasn't able to do that 5 years ago, and
That's right.
but now they
And
are.
right, they've really grown into their own. And I think the key learnings, coming out of Fortune, 50s with, a run at Hewlett Packard and then Oracle and Cisco, everybody used Salesforce and Marketo, for the front end and the back end for execution. That's all I knew, right? So I had, close to 25 years of Marketo when they came out new all the way through, and then Salesforce. And so when I started working and building mid-cap companies, it still kind of worked if you're a billion and above, but a billion and under, it just did not work. And that's why I totally loved the EOS system, right? Because it was right for the enterprise. I'm sorry, not enterprise, but for entrepreneur. And that's when I learned about the new tools too. So like, working with HubSpot was literally a massive lift of weight off our shoulders. And then the second thing is learning about ZoomInfo and how the two of those plug together. That's like a 1-2 punch for our productivity. It went from just really kind of a slow drag, learning to use the tools and getting through our Monday morning pipeline calls and things of that nature, to actually being, having a dashboard that we all understood. We knew how to make it ourselves. We didn't have an assistant. It was just a totally different experience. And on top, your point of customer support, that's a big deal. I think the companies that are, sized for our target companies of 1,000 and under really made a difference too, because people are available and they really care. And we could see our input of like, can the product do this? Can the product do that? It may not have at the time, but we see our fingerprint in some of their new releases. So that part also made a huge difference.
Right. Yeah, no, that is really cool. And I mean, of course, integrations this period, of course, that was another big thing that HubSpot was very proud to announce last week, was just, all, you just mentioned ZoomInfo, but there are now, I think, 170, different apps that are really critical to different types of businesses. And this is where the unified piece comes in. It's obviously great to be easy and fast, but HubSpot philosophically have always had this approach. Well, if it's not unified, in other words, if you don't have everything, all the data synced in real time, then you're not really being as efficient, and you won't grow as efficiently as you would be otherwise. So being able to integrate those really critical tools in your business, and and you probably see this with your clients, and as we do with ours, that depending on the industry that they're in, they use a different set of tools, right? So their tech stacks all look a little different. But in our case, 100% of our clients have HubSpot, and then it's integrated with, in some cases, still with Salesforce or Microsoft, but then all these other apps that they need, that their marketing team or their sales team or their service team needs to really be productive in their day to day. And of course, again, you cannot help mentioning, of course, now that AI is as AI is added to each of those products and tools, the productivity and efficiency just keeps increasing.
Well, I think you're totally right. The whole piece of AI. So, Timaron Group, that's all we've ever done is AI, right? We're just data. We're about that. So we've done it the hard way, kind of like from the root level out. And when you start to see what HubSpot can do, and the community and the collaboration that's been done with APIs to all types of applications, that just made our life and our life with our clients significantly more effective because nothing's easy in tech, right? I don't mean it to sound like it's, you turn it on and it drives itself, but it definitely made a difference to be able to have HubSpot be ahead of the game with their APIs. And now on top of it, as we can bring any kind of structured or unstructured data to our clients, if they're on HubSpot, it's so much easier for us to help them on their revenue side, right? So, the one thing you think about RevOps Champions, that's a huge play to be able to use HubSpot as the engine and to get the data in it. So, the fuel that goes in is exactly what you need. It's not junk in, junk out. It's been cleansed, it's been focused. And once it hits HubSpot, from what I've learned on this, again, like we're, just embarking, like we're a year old into this, it really can get into the major plugs for front end marketing, sales, and service and support, right? And that line between all those different types of applications and tracking is getting thinner and thinner because you can start to see where their APIs are working and it's bringing it together. So I'm very excited to hear from you more about how and what you learned at the conference and what we can learn and leverage with our clients too, because several didn't get to go, right? It's a huge conference now.
Yeah, I think this year there were 12,000 people, and then of course there were 100,000 people who were going who tallied in just for the keynotes, the big keynotes, which of course where a lot of the big announcements were made, and those are actually publicly available as well on HubSpot's YouTube channel.
Oh, that's good to know. So I'm going to refer my clients to that. I didn't know that they could actually dial in and see those.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. But we should have maybe publicized that more. But
Well, I think that's really key to like your one of your questions that you had about what really lets people be more productive, right? That question was an excellent question that you posed, and I talked it. I talked these through actually with all of our team at Timaron Group just to get different perspectives. And as you would expect, we got a lot of different answers. So, thinking about going through this, when you would ask, like, okay, in previous roles, what are the key elements that you needed to do to be able to succeed? Everyone had on their list a common communications backbone, right? So having an operating system like EOS or in big corporations, Six Sigma Lean, it doesn't really matter. Just have a tool that lets you speak the same language. And that also needs to be the full communications plan on it needs to also be in our onboarding. So because every day somebody new's coming and then that person doesn't really fully know. And if we can get, things like rocks or you say what's going to be our strategic plans, people understand those words. That helped the acceleration significantly. Two others that came up as we were all discussing this, we said it's also really good to be clear in understanding the whole RACI, roles accountability, who is responsible for what, so that are you the decision maker or are you part of the advisory group, right? That was another piece is if, you have five people that are working a special project and everybody thinks they're making the decision, but nobody realizes only one person is, and the roles. So that whole communications backbone and then also understanding your roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities. Those two things are what I found both like in big corporations, like the Fortune 50s, down to, five people in somebody's garage that we're working with, right? The early stage or startup, true startup. Because everybody, especially the startups, it gets hard. Everybody actually wants to be the head of like, I want to do sales or I want to do the fun things, right? And nothing works if you don't have everybody sitting in their proper positions playing the game. So,
yeah, no,
so
you're
it was a
right.
big deal for us.
Yeah, and now I can see why you were talking about EOS. So I mean, really, what you're saying is like, what is the operating system based on the stage and age of your business? What is the operating system that you're using? Whether you're whether you're a fast 50 or a Fortune 50, you have to have an operating system that helps you scale and gain traction.
And again, it can be, the team can vote on it. They can pick it. There's a lot of different choices. We just happen to find that, a billion and above, we love using the basic like Six Sigma lean, right? I don't think you need the full Six Sigma unless you're up in the Fortune 100, Fortune 50s. But we either use Six Sigma lean as a process when we work with our clients. And if it's a billion and under, we usually use EOS. And that's mainly for all of us. It cuts down, quite honestly, the amount they have to pay for projects as well, right? Because the quicker we get everybody on the same communications page, the less time and money on billing that, the client has to pay just having meetings for meetings on topics. Otherwise you get on topics and you regurgitate a lot of data, whereas if you come in with a framework and the some kind of dashboards, that really helps the meetings be more effective too.
Right. So
Clients seem more productive.
yeah, absolutely. So, Barb, this is maybe a good time for us to pause, and if you wouldn't mind just sort of sharing, sort of at a high level, what the services are that you provided at Timaron Group.
Happy to do that. So Timaron Group's been in business since 2008. We're based in Palo Alto, California, but we're global. So we're basically just about data. It's artificial intelligence now is the new term, but we started way back with data marts and business intelligence and how whatever the flavor of the day was on data. But it's just about taking data. We communicate it across all types of technology. So the term in the industry is across all glass, right? That could be the PCs, the Macs, the Androids, the cell phones. And we basically do it on all 5 continents. So we're global. We have regional heads for each of the main geographies, and we do it in 7 industries. So we have in-depth industry experience. And if you go to our website at timarongroup.com, it actually will list those out with examples of case studies and things that we've done in those industries. But we really like to be hands on. We're a group of operators, not consultants. So there's roughly 200 of us across the globe. It's people probably very similar to a lot of our clients. Some of our clients through their careers have actually come to work with us. And it's people that actually have sat in a chair, whether you're an engineer or a developer or sales. And we actually spend time with companies solving those business problems and using information to really be a key piece. So the types of services that go with that is like your typical Deming standard. Everybody knows the triangle of we leverage people and we leverage different processes that we've learned over the years in our roles, and really the whole procedures and understanding how do you take a problem, dissect it, break it apart to rebuild it, and then be able to solve that problem using information and our processes to really do that. So that was a long mouthful, but that's basically just what it is. It's very pragmatic. It's not a lot of flash like you would get if you were paying some of the big consulting firms. It's really roll up our sleeves, block and tackle to go in and solve a problem. And we bring AI and put AI to work for whatever that issue is. And a lot of people are still learning how to use data as a competitive weapon, how to use data as a marketing goal to get the bullseye more frequently, or just basically, employee happiness, really understanding what makes people tick and then how to get there is a big portion of what we do. A lot of cultural work as well.
That's a lot, but and you're doing this across both. So you work with companies that are over a billion and companies that are under a billion.
That's correct. So we spend time usually in a division level, in some occasions at the strategic C-suite level with the Fortune 50s, and those are like fairly big projects. Like if you looked at Kaiser Permanente in the healthcare side, you look at Cargill in the manufacturing and ag side, et cetera. We're brought in to help set strategy and direction on a 3-year strategy, and from that, we also break that down to a 1-year operating plan that includes everything from budget to headcount to what are the top 3 rocks or the top 3 goals we're going to solve. So we can do that from the top down. We also spend a lot of time with what I call early stage to mid cap. It's very similar process, but we use a different tool. We'll use EOS because the Six Sigma is just too big to go after that. But we will work that way. And again, that's because we're operators. And so the way that 200 plus employee base is divided up is based on where they've come from. There's not a lot of people that have been in, a Fortune 100 and a startup. Right. We have a few that bridge that. That's a unique skill set that we have on the team, but it's really based on the people that we have and how they can side by side with somebody in the same role map up and address the issues that they're facing inside their organization. And we use data and process to help them. We're not a head shop, we're not a consulting shop. We're basically there for a specific reason to get a task done and to be able to use the data.
Really cool. I'd love to dig in a little more, Barb, into, you mentioned now a couple of times that you're operators and not consultants. How would you explain the difference between? Because I mean, I'd like to think that we're actually operators too,
You
but
are. I think
yes,
so too. I actually definitely see your company as operators because the difference, just on the paper, on black and white differences, is consultants are usually trained in certain processes and they are trained and educated on maybe an industry expertise where they come. The difference between the operator is they've been in the chair, they've carried the P&L, they've carried the quota, they are measured, they're hired or fired by the way they actually execute the strategies and things that they put together. And a consultant may never have had to execute that or be in that role. So, an operator to me is like one step closer to that front line in any company, right? You have had to execute the role that you've been given. A consultant is more of advisory, which are also very critical. We've always used consultants at any of the companies that I've worked for, except maybe some of the early startups. And that's just limitation of money. Usually they don't have the money to pay a lot of that, but that definitely it's a different role. And what we've found in working with our clients that makes a big difference, especially if we're doing a very big project, like we did a big project a couple of years ago working for a telecommunications company that actually wanted to circle the globe below Earth orbit with internet. And you can probably guess who that was. And we had a lot of people that really had been engineering in low Earth orbit OEM agreements. We had people that were really big in communications from global, came from some of the big global companies. We had people that really understood the materials and what could actually sustain low Earth orbit pressures, unlike here on Earth. And bringing those people together that had actually worked on products and quality measures made such a difference. As an advisor, we used advisors as well in that process, and advisors were great as well. They could help with the big picture, making sure, especially on project timelines, things of that nature for a project this big and 37 different subcontractors under it. The consultant services were great. We could do that too, but we were busy building the product, and so I think there's more than enough room for everybody. But that's what I really see the difference is more hands-on and bringing the experiences from the past of where you've been and, really helping that person or that department or that company, leverage some of that and bring it to life.
right.
That's very fulfilling and it's exciting. It's exciting work.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, it's kind of, which again is different to the gig economy, of course, that's blowing up right now, where you have more and more fractional people, and I forget what the phrase was that I read over the weekend, but where essentially people will now have two or three fractional gigs instead of one job. So another. So they aren't necessarily operators, but they might be. But it's on a fractional basis.
Right. And I do think one of the key things, especially for those that are listening, you don't have to be we do a lot of fractional work, right? We've been a gig economy since 2008. That was our first piece was to go in and be I was a fractional COO for Bob Ewald at SGI and he brought me in specifically because we were looking to sell the company. So for one of our first gigs, it was to go in and do that with the intent of knowing what the set goal was. It was very perfect. I had done three very large sales in the past, and so that was great. We do a lot of fractional. All the C-suite, right, is there, but we also do individual fractionals, and so now this whole new phase is kind of, to your point, expanding. It's for individuals, which I think is completely exciting with the amount of people that are going in and out of companies now, massive hiring, and then a year later, massive firing. I mean, I think people are getting comfortable. You're not only going in, but being released, right? Being released 10 years ago, you're in the hall of fame and then the wall of shame. Now it's like you're letting go 1,200 people. I want that list and I want to hire them, right? I mean, it's people, the whole dynamics of how people work and what is not only financially and productively efficient, but also the fact of the personal side, I think is really changing. I love the gig economy. We're structured that way at Timaron Group.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, so
Yeah, and
that's
one of the key things we did operationally right out of the gate was because I was, living and seeing this in Silicon Valley. In 2008, the gig economy was fairly big because people were just switching teams all the time, right? We used to joke around and said it isn't a job, it's a wardrobe. You'd have Intel on one day, you'd have HP on the next day. I mean, just depends where you're at that moment in time. And setting up a business where we can say to people, "Come work for us how you want to work." Right? That was really important because we were missing some great talent just trying to bring in an employee. Because if it was somebody that had been released maybe one or two times already, they're like, I need to hang out my own shingle. Okay, hang out your own shingle. We'll put you on a 1099. We'll bring you in as W-2 if you need insurance, whatever, however you want to work. All we really care about is we have these clients that have these needs and have these deadlines. And if you come in and do your part that matches that, on time and on budget, even better, under budget, great. We've got lots of opportunities for you to work. And I think more and more companies are starting to see, especially since COVID, exactly to your point, is like work how you want, enjoy it, and you can balance your lifestyle the way you want. For me, I was a total workaholic. It's like, I want more, I want more, I want more, right? If now you get into today's world, they're like, I want what I want, but I also need this time off. And so much better with the newer generation working it than when I grew up. But it's exciting. And I love seeing it work that way. It really does work.
yes. Well, and I think also we've all, those of us who've been around a little longer, we've realized the benefits of actually, having a day off every now and again. You come back not only more productive but more creative, right? Because
More
if you
creative and so refreshed and just, yeah, it
yes,
definitely helps.
right,
Helps the
right.
joyfulness of the connection. And you're excited to see people again, right? You get a little weighted when you're on big projects and stuff, take some time off, come back in, and you're recharged.
Yes, exactly. So Barb, so we touched on this a little bit earlier, but data and tech again are so closely related, and then of course as is process. And we've already talked about a little bit that data can actually be a liability if it's not clean and organized. How do you manage these two areas of tech and data with your team and stay on the positive side of those two being assets versus liabilities?
That's an excellent question. And in full truthfulness and transparency, there is always a good and a bad with data. A lot of it comes down to how you use data, and that comes from the tone at the top. What is the company culture? Why are you even reaching for data? What good is it going to do if you use it? If you don't have defined up front, and we actually run a series of trainings right now, like how is your company being competitive with AI? Like we'll go into a C-suite and we'll actually sit down and we'll take an hour or two and explain what is the strengths of AI, what are the weaknesses, and then we take it one level down and say, how do you feel as a C-suite? Each of you, they do self-grading, but it's all anonymous. We roll it up to the top, and we'll put together programs to work with those individuals to say, if you don't know anything about AI, that's okay. We'll help you get there, right? If you're head of manufacturing, we'll show you what is a really good thing to learn about it. Or if you're head of HR, a lot of companies are just blindly going into this. Like we all know AI, we use AI, we do whatever. But the reality is, if you don't know what questions to ask that lead to your strategic goals or your rocks or whatever the the terminology you're using, you're going to waste a lot of money and a lot of time, whether it's for good or bad, because you really have to understand at the grassroots, go down to the very front line, understand what is AI and what is our score as a management team or as a company. Are we 50% on board with it? Are we 2%? You need to start there. And then you need to find out it's not if, it's when. Your competition's going to beat you if you're not in tune with AI. So our goal when we work with them is to say, let's be as honest and transparent. It's nothing to be ashamed about if you don't know it. I mean, there is a lot of people that just don't want to feel like they're not on top of it, but it's complicated. I mean, I've done this for 45 years of my career. Every day I wake up thinking I've got this thing licked, and then halfway through the day I've learned three more things and thinking, wow, when did that happen? That just happened in the last week. So we like to be able to kind of get down and say, if this is your strategic plan and this is the operating 1 year plan, and you, Barb Stinnett, this is the top three things you have to get done. We will work with Barb Stinnett to say, let's learn AI by applying them to your three goals. And let's see how much better you can do year over year as you start to really adopt and to use artificial intelligence. And then that rolls up and that brings the strength of the whole company into that operational plan. You start to see the numbers tweak and get better. And then you also start getting really innovative 3 year plans, right? That gets exciting because people push themselves more. Once they learn it and can see the what ifs and how you do it, that's where it goes to good, right? So you're saying what happens when it's not good is when you don't have it tied to your goals down to the individual with the two or three rocks or goals that you're trying to achieve, and you spend a ton of time with a lot of data just talking, right? It will consume you. It consumes, we work a lot in healthcare and in global supply chain. At least 50% of our meetings with our clients during the week are in a regurgitation discussion of data. So the great news is we've spent a lot of money, we got a lot of data, it's all out there, but we still, everybody in the room kind of sits back and I just say, so what? Okay, so now, so what? We know this data. It's just data. What is it going to do to help Barb Stinnett in her role that contributes to my peers, that contributes to the goal? So, really having that process down, I think, is critical for it to be good. And for it to not be good, it is lack of understanding how to use information to help you get ahead. And with RevOps, that's like huge. I'm sure at your company and with your clients too. I mean, the whole key is, cash is king. It pays everybody's payroll, it pays new product development, it does these things. So really make that information work for you in a return on your investments, right? The money. That's very, very important. There's just one other quick thing that's different, it's more unique for our AI industry, like as a company, is also we have to be very careful when we're asked to do projects to help guide our clients to this type of process. It may not be what they want. It may not be their culture. Probably 60 to 70% of what comes to us, we decline only because we can't see being successful if we don't have that kind of thinking or energy internally. Because, I mean, it would be great for us. We'll end up billing a lot, but that's not necessarily what we want. What we want is, yeah, yes, everybody wants revenue, but we also want people to be excited about working with us.
And yeah, so and that commitment has to come from the top.
And it has to come from the company, the clients, and from the top.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference. So there's a whole new generation coming, and I'm not talking age, I'm just like the next phase of really AI sophisticated executives, regardless of their industry, regardless of their operating experience in the past. They have to really be thinking about why you even want the data and how are you going to use it.
And it's actually what's also interesting is how you cannot even really have a conversation about data and tech anymore without starting to talk about AI, right? Because it's data and tech for today and forevermore will include how are you going to leverage AI as part of that your sort of data and technology strategy, right?
You're exactly right. I mean, it's omnipresent. And I was just listening to this clip that was on Minnesota Public Radio last weekend, and it was talking about the healthcare industry. We do a ton of work in the healthcare industry, and what it was like pre 1990, pre HIPAA. And now what is it like now, right? 70 to 75 cents on a dollar is spent coding and entering something into one of the systems so that you have data. I mean, it just swung and nobody can see that data. It's protected. At the end of the day, for people that are in AI like you and me and it's other clients, you can get anything you want. I mean, it may take a little bit more, but like you can find everything now. So basically, live the life the way you want it to be, live and drive your company the way you would like to participate in, identify if you want to be a gig or employee for your own personal reasons. The fact is, it is omnipresent, it's everywhere. And so, before I remember when social media came out and a lot of the younger generation was posting their tattoos and the parties and things they were doing. And I thought, oh my gosh, once it's digital, it never goes away. You're going to be really,
It's going to
upset in
follow
20
you
years.
around.
It's going to
Yeah,
follow
yeah.
you around. And at the end of the day, it did follow them around. And like, who cares? you know but 10 years ago when they were talking about it, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how's this going to work? And now it's just so acceptable. Like it's just gotten so crazy that it's okay as long as your intent and like your transparency, integrity, things come through. Those types of things that people used to think were going to big deal aren't. It's interesting to see how just the open data piece, and that's what I like about some of the things we're seeing with X and others. It's still in its growth stage, but it's going to get there, and it's going to get there fast as AI continues to accelerate. That amount of data, whether it's a truth or maybe not a truth or whatever, it basically all is truth because that's the data now.
Yeah, it is crazy. So I'm going to try and okay, so I guess a question that I had, because we talk a lot about with the pillars of RevOps are people, process, data, and technology. Whether it's kicking off with a client or you're strategizing around something, whether it's internally or externally with a client. Does one of those come before the others, or does it depend? In other words, do you when you're starting something new, do you say, okay, well, we have to start with what is the data that we're after, or do you say, well, the people piece, of course, is the culture and communication piece that you mentioned earlier, or is it process, or in our experience, technology comes last. But yeah, do you have any like thoughts on when you put data before process, or process before data, or people before data and process?
Absolutely. And this, no matter what size company, right? We follow more the Deming triangle where we've got the people, the process, and product. So we have the tech and the data kind of combined together. That is always last because that is something that serves the function of whatever the goal is. And the process to us is second because it's always about how are we going to develop the strategy and execute. So we'll do the process. To us, the number one by far is what goes up and down and out the door every day on the elevator: people, right? That is, without the people being bought in, being there to help execute it, to collaborate with each other, getting that culture and the goal and the people aligned first. That's where we start. We say, okay, what is the key issue? How did this issue come about? What has been the experiences, good, bad, ugly, in the past? We work really hard to get the trust factor going. Usually in that first 90 days, it's not a 2-week fix. It's not a one meeting fix. It's like a series of things to get people focused. And then we line up with the process that works best for the age and stage of the company. And we really kind of get that going, say, here's our roadmap. This is what we all just agreed on in the first phase. And it wouldn't have happened without all of you together. And then we will lead that in to say, let's just knock this out of the box. Let's get a home run here. We got to have a framework, and we'll explain why process is important. We usually have somebody that is very good at process take the lead, like almost like a project manager on that. And if they don't have anybody, we'll put one of our fractionals in with a goal of cross training. They need to meet us. So when we're gone, that person really has got a new piece of their skill set that they can carry on with. And from that, we will then recommend the technologies, because throwing technologies in first is always, that's the easiest thing to do, right? That was the mistake we as a company made, right? I've always used Salesforce. I've always used Marketo. I need that for Timaron Group, right? Millions of dollars later and a lot of frustration. And we just went, well, what were we thinking, right? We should have started with who we are and what we want, and that would have led to a different answer. So I love the pillars question, and I'm excited. I know you guys follow that similarly too. I think our processes are very similar on that.
It's interesting that because I completely agree. But so, for example, we were talking about EOS earlier. So, in one of the great things that a lot of SMBs will credit EOS for in their first year or two of running on EOS is that it removed a lot of the emotion from the business, so that you're just so that you don't so people aren't getting you're not focusing on the people issues, you're focusing more on the process issues. So
That's correct. You don't feel called out.
yeah, so we always whenever that comes up and we start wanting to point fingers at a particular individual, I'm typically the one of the people that'll go, okay, whoop, stop, okay, let's make sure, is there something in the process that's broken that we need to fix first before we continue to point fingers at somebody who is just, if the process was better, that mistake wouldn't have happened, or whatever the case may be.
That's an excellent point. To add on to that, we always start with people just because we want them to define what the issue is and where they're at. And during that first phase of the definitions, we spend time in two levels. One is on what's worked and what hasn't in the past. So we do try to flush out, was it a process break? Did this, do that, or whatever? And fully put out there that you are the team that's going to change this, right? That there is absolutely no blame or pointing fingers in here. What we're doing is we can do it anonymously. So we have a process we'll go through to anonymously gather the data. But it's interesting how most of the groups, especially if you have a mixed group of newer people with some people who have been there a long time, saying, no, let's do this. Like, let's figure out, if you feel like you've been blamed for something that really wasn't your fault because of X, Y, and Z, lots of times they want to flush that out too. So it's interesting to see if we know, and this is actually something from 2 months ago. We had a group that the company was really failing. They were running really fast to a chapter something, and they'd had a couple of turnovers at the CEO level in the last 2 years. It was a little bit of a hostile environment to go in. As part of our first 90 days, in trying to just diffuse everybody from sitting with their arms crossed in a meeting to just at least being able to breathe, is we used a tool which I think a lot of people have used, is called Insight, to kind of help explain, what type of person am I? And, are you a half full or half empty person? Are you analytical? Are you more marketing? And then, they have the colors that you have these little stacks on your desk. And it sounds silly to describe it out loud, but it's interesting because, again, it's another one of those things, like 6 months, 12 months into working with the client, they're like, that I am a red, green, blue. And they're like, oh, that's right. you know, I need to come with you not only with my problem, but I need to have three answers for you to think about, right? Or don't come in here, charging with a new idea or whatever is going. You need to give it to me first. I need time to ingest. And little things like that are part of that first part of that gaining trust and really getting to know each other. And your point about keeping people, it truly is about what the sum total is of the management team or the project team, right? Just, are you going to be successful or not, really counts on those types of activities up front, and really coming in with at least a partial comfort that you're working in a safe environment, and hopefully it gets to a safe environment when the team's in the project and working it, right? Just feeling like we're making a difference, and that it's okay if you make mistakes. It just makes us smarter because now we know.
And of course, it's a lot easier when you already have that trust on the team before you start. But of course, I get what you're saying. In your case or in our case, we want to make sure that that trust exists before we get deep into an implementation, because without it, it's going to be really hard to be successful.
Just pushing a noodle.
Barb, so whether this is, I mean, we've talked a little bit about both our failed Salesforce implementations in our own businesses, but what we learn from that, right? So what now goes into your decision to implement new technology within your organization, or what you would advise to a company? How long does it take for the team to fully adopt and what systems and processes have you implemented to make adoption easier?
That's again another great question. That's changed a lot since the beginnings. In 2008, we were looking at brand name like a Marketo and a Salesforce and their track record for implementation, et cetera. The way that we do it now is if we have a problem that can be solved by some technology being applied, is we really be sure that we've got the problem defined with it could just be a SWAT team, focus group, whatever you want to call it, to say, what do we really mean that we need a better CRM? Like what is it that we're reaching for? Quit using the term, use the words, I need to see whatever. So we actually spend a little bit more time up front writing down and describing. We eat our own dog food. We follow the process to say, let's start at the top. What's the problem? What is the solution? And what are the different types of technologies that might address it? And then we will switch gears to say, okay, who will see the demos and the things of that, and we vote on those with different criteria for dashboard. And then we actually always ask for a trial. And I bet you 9 out of 10 times we'll get 60 to 90 days free trial to do it with a letter of intent in their hand saying, if it does these things as we believe, we come to agreement with a vendor, then we will sign a contract. That helps a lot from the standpoint of just flushing out, are we all saying the decoder ring, right? We're all saying the same word, but are we all meaning the same thing, down to testing it and then getting to that point. The second thing that we do different that we didn't in the beginning was we always had a technology lead on it and a business unit lead on it. So let's say it's something that's, has to do specific with business development. We will make sure that somebody on the IT team at Timaron is partnered with the person that's going to use it for their day-to-day job. So that helps a lot too. Before we were just having IT do it. And then we switched and said, IT doesn't know my needs. So we switched to business unit. Both ways failed. So in complete honesty and transparency, both failed. I mean, it kind of got done, but it just, now that we've done that, and we've probably been about 10 years into that process where it's, we call it the tag team, they really do a great job. And those two people then are also responsible, once we've picked something, they are also, if you will, the program or the project leads to go into their groups, into the business unit team and teach the app, and into the IT team to teach the administration, right? So that really, it sounds complicated, but it isn't. It's just made it so much easier to, having somebody that's a business unit person try to explain it to the rest of IT for admin, total mess, right? Having IT come out, that works a little bit better, but they still don't really feel the pain. They don't make or break the job of the person that's there. They just teach them out of the manual. So that's actually worked quite well.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Do you still have a few minutes?
Oh yeah, I'm wide open.
Because I wanted to make sure that I asked you the question. So again, when you've been around, as long as you and I have in business, especially in our own businesses, and with all the mistakes that we've made, and we've touched on a few of those, and I'm sure there's a lot that we haven't, there's obviously a lot more that we haven't talked about. So what were your greatest outcomes or success stories or accomplishments that would not have happened had you not been through the mistakes or the challenges that you had to get through to get there?
There's three that come to mind. I'll share one. One is around precision agriculture. So before the big project with this consumer packaged goods company for precision agriculture, I would have never been brave enough to break some glass and to try new things and learn how to work with multiple vendors at once to solve a problem. I would always be solving a problem that a client needed, either ourselves or bringing in a partner in some way, shape, or form that brought a product that helped solve the problem. When I did precision agriculture, uh, everybody except for one person, I was starting right out of the gate in 2008. Everybody said it's not going to work except one of my mentors from Hewlett Packard. His name was Joel Birnbaum. He was the head of R&D labs, and he always broke glass, but he was the head of labs. He could do that, right? I'm out in the field, and he'd always told me, follow your heart. You'll always learn. A continuous learner. whether it's viewed as a plus or a minus, is you're still learning. So that project would not have happened. It had 27 vendors to pull the solution together. It was a huge orchestration of bringing it together. Everybody had fractions of the deal. Nobody ran or owned the deal. But for the greater good, to get a higher yield and better quality of food out from the number one food and beverage provider was a goal that everybody could get on board with. And so having, not having fear of failure is what made that happen. And having someone that actually put faith in me years before I even got to that project was what gave me the confidence to say, why not? And get out there and try it. And so, yeah, and that's really what led to a lot of what Timaron Group's about. We work, with a lot of different people, right? We've got close to 45 different tier one vendors that we incorporate. We leverage plugging in through APIs similar to yourselves with the AI. And I think that that's really what's helped to build our company today is just knowing that you can, because tech is just tech. To your point, it should always be the last thing you do. It's the people and the innovation. That's number one. And then figuring out how do you get from A to C. You got to have that process.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think people often think that the tech, because the tech companies are so innovative and are so good at marketing their innovation, that I think a lot of business leaders fall into the trap of thinking, well, if I buy that product or subscribe to that product, it's going to solve my innovation.
Absolutely. Happens all the time.
And I'm sure it's happened to me multiple times too.
Yes, me too.
Barb, so well, first of all, thanks again so much for
You're welcome.
joining me on the show. But as we wrap up, well, I guess last week was a huge week across the CRM ecosystems that we all know. From Salesforce, there was Dreamforce last week. Microsoft Dynamics and HubSpot all made the same announcement last week that essentially they are now AI agent businesses, right? They are no longer CRM platforms. They are now AI agent platforms, which is quite staggering. And clearly there was a lot of positioning and stuff going on behind the scenes there,
Absolutely.
because it is a bit of a race to plant the flag. So I think they all had to come out with that announcement at the same time. However, for the lay people that you and I work with every day, who are just trying to figure out how to be better at growing their businesses, what advice do you have for leadership teams of lower mid-market companies specifically? We don't have a lot of listeners from the Fortune 50, but for sort of lower mid-market companies, 200 to 2,000 people, what advice do you have around incorporating AI into their revenue operations?
First of all, the advice is don't be intimidated. It's just a new form of tech. And remember, you are running your company. You are the people that know your business the best. And using advisors or vendors or operators or consultants, whatever, you've got a lot of people around you that are there, and just find the ones that feel good to work with and get smart on it. Right, spend some time either getting assessment of your team or wherever to figure out where are you really in the AI or the data level to be a competitive weapon, not just be information anymore, because your competition is looking at it like a competitive weapon. That's happening. And somebody is going to win in your industry or in your business because they are a step ahead of understanding how AI can be used. So remember, you know your business the best, and getting smart on AI and leveraging that so that you guys really feel that you're going to hit a home run when you start to dive into it, to me, is the first level of advice. The second piece is you've got great processes. You've been in business for the number of years that you have. So, really lean on that process. Lean on the fact that you've got a common language, whether it's EOS, a lean, whatever you use, and know that you got the process. And then, just like everything, you're putting it into the machine. You start bringing those vendors in, and all of the hype about what just came out last week. There is a lot for somebody like Timaron Group. We are thrilled. We can't even answer the phone fast enough right now since last week. I don't, because we're lean and mean. We're only 200 plus people, but we do really great work. But you know, there's only 200 people. Each one of these like probably have 200 people doing their marketing each. So you know, being an early stage to mid cap, it's always concerning because you feel you don't ever have enough people and you don't ever have enough money. But trust your gut on the team that you have around you that you really do know your business best, and get your processes in line, and then find a great collaborator that's in the network. Maybe not a technology product persons, but people that actually have the pillars, like you call them, right? I mean, like talking to yourself, talking to us. There's literally so many people that actually can really help and come in and get you up to speed on certain things, and then you just take off. So to me, that would be my advice. Is it's always intimidating and it's somewhat scary when there's a big release, which last week was huge, and there's a second wave coming that's going to be between Thanksgiving and Christmas, about like, okay, now this is where it's at. It's going to start hitting us faster and faster in waves, because the next, 12 to 24 months is all about figuring out what is AI and how does it make you competitive. So learn it, trust your coworkers, and take a deep breath, lean on your processes, and there'll be enough tech for everybody, no matter whose it is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because every single presentation is going to sound the same, and it's going to sound just as good or better than the one you just heard. So get your footing and be sure your footing's stable.
So I guess that leads me to one more question in that case, which is, what would you say to a business leader that says, like, we don't really have access to enough data in our business because of our size? How would you solve, or how would you answer that question, first of all? And if you did realize that they didn't have enough data, how would you suggest that they find the data that they need?
Well, first of all, I'd say call me. Call Timaron Group, because we're all about data. But the process that we do is like, like, let's say, and everybody should be doing this that's in data for you, right? It's different, just different levels at different industries. First of all, really trying to define what data is it that you need. Do you need what they call first level data? Do you need seventh level data, right? There's different levels of data for drill downs. When you're working with the SEC, or you're working with something in healthcare and you're doing a care pathway to solve a better outcome for someone, you need 7 layers of data. If you're just trying to get like general population for something, or looking at QA data on a product you might be making, you may only need one level data. So talk to somebody that really knows data and let them help you figure out what level do you need and how much do you need of it, right? Is it, setting they call it the geographic fencing. So you figure out how deep do you have to go, and are you doing this for like a certain project? Are you doing something that's for worldwide? They set a fence around the data, and that determines how much you're going to get and what pricing. So if you are working with somebody, they should always be asking you, what level of the data is it that you need, and what is the fencing or the footprint of it. That gives you pricing, so you know how to buy. Like, for example, let's pick healthcare for us. For me, there's certain things on care pathways. If somebody's got chronic COPD in 3 or 4 different states, and I need to really understand what doctor are they seeing, what medicine are they on, are they compliant or not, et cetera. I mean, those are layers of data, the 1 through 7. I'm going to have to pay a lot for 7 layers of data. But I mainly only might want it for this certain clinic for this certain doctor. So I can save money by knowing exactly what I'm trying to pull together. So that's how I would look at the data question. And again, those are just kind of general learnings as AI starts to roll out. People haven't had to think about that before. Now there's a lot of people saying, I have the data you want and I'll sell it to you, no problem. And there'll be a lot of money spent that probably doesn't need to be spent if you can really take some of that time in the upfront discussions for it.
So because you just have such a unique perspective on this. Do you think that first party data is, I mean, it might be enough, but you're saying that more and more businesses are going to have to look beyond first party data, in other words, their own data, to really make the most of AI?
Absolutely. I think depending on as you learn, and like right now, I think first level, firsthand is going to be great for maybe the next 6 months, maybe, but there's already several people going deeper, way deeper. And like even like for ourselves, like if we're working with a specific client that's in, say, the industrial manufacturing industry, we're not only just looking at their problem where it's at, we're going back into a history of research and things that we've done for a lot of our industrial manufacturing, which at the time, 6, 8 years ago, we wouldn't look at this type of data, but now that data is really important for us in our research to be able to take back. So that's what I mean. Like, just as an example of a company itself, like I have got to beat myself on getting to the table with the latest and greatest and understanding your history as well as what you're getting from the client, maybe from some of their data resources, et cetera. That's got to all come in and really help with what is the definition of the problem you're solving now. And it will be solved in a different, unique way because of what you've done before. That old saying, what got you here won't get you there. That's really true with data for sure. But what got you here done that first part, it can help you get there faster. But it will be different.
Yeah, which is the opposite end of the spectrum of what we've talked about quite a bit recently here on RevOps Champions, which is the most dangerous saying in business is this is how we've always done it.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. The second I hear that, like the hair on the back of my neck kind of goes up. It's like, oh, right. We've got some things to work on.
Yeah. So Barb, I guess I have to ask you then this next question related to the sort of third party data, which is so you mentioned at the beginning of the call, you mentioned ZoomInfo, right? So companies like ZoomInfo and their biggest competitor, I believe right now is
Apollo.
Apollo.io. Does that put them in a really strong position if people are going to need to go beyond first party data, and I'm speaking specifically from a sales and marketing perspective, which of course is a lot of what we focus on of course with revenue operations is marketing, sales, and customer service. With customer service, obviously you're using first party data, but with sales and marketing, if you can leverage something like ZoomInfo or Apollo, enriches your data quite a bit. Do you think that's so? This is obviously a good thing for companies like that.
I think it's definitely a good things for companies like that. I think that it's just like any other tech, though. Be sure you define it and work it, the process we just talked about, and then evaluate is the depth and breadth of what a Zoom Info or Apollo gives you. Or is it feeling too heavy? Or does it maybe it's just quite honestly going and buying lists from people. You don't even have to have an application. You might just say, for what I need, I'm just going to get a list that's current and I'm only going to be running this sales campaign this year, right? So it really does depend how much you're going to use it and what you're using it for. But it does put them in a good position, but I don't think they're the end all to anything. Just like any software, right? I mean, I've grown up in the SaaS world. I grew up in even before SaaS world. That's how old I am. But I just remember thinking, like, as fast as you see somebody's lips moving, somebody's behind it trying to code what they just promised. So I mean, it's all about really knowing what you want and then just seeing at the moment in time, is it really a good fit for it? We like Zoom Info from the standpoint of it's a fairly easy tool to use for list for sales campaigns. So that's just and it feeds really well into HubSpot, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of stuff feeds well in HubSpot. HubSpot's great. Your guys' business is awesome, right? I mean, it's solving a lot of problems at a price point that makes sense, right? It can be expensive based on age and stage, but it's very mindful of its users. That's why we love HubSpot. And
Yeah, which
I don't
which
know
is
if that
why
answered your question, but to me, that's
no,
the
absolutely. I caught myself doing exactly what we talked about earlier, which is you know looking at ZoomInfo and Apollo for our innovation, which is not going to happen.
yeah, yeah. It makes a difference. But don't you feel now, Brendan, that like the business, especially for our early stage to mid caps, that it is? I feel like we're more part of one entity now. Like everybody's racing for the top. There's a lot of this in Silicon Valley where, you hope that you get bought by your competitor or that you get eat by the one that's, bigger than you, because then you're just going to go and recreate the next thing and do great. That's not necessarily been the culture across the rest of the United States, but I definitely feel it's moving there now. And I think AI is going to take down a lot of the silo walls. And the name of the game is like, let's quit building IP. Let's get to market first. Why are we wasting this money on IP? Let's get to market first. And to get to market, you, and you, we need to come together and we need to be one focus, one goal and do it. And I think that having AI is really going to take down those silos and help people. And that's why I say if you're not fully on board with it yet, or you feel like you're not comfortable with it yet, do it fast, because in the next year, somebody else will be doing what you're doing
Yeah.
quicker, faster, better.
Yeah, that's a really great note to end on, because that's the reality. Barb, thanks again so much.
You bet. Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I wish you all the best here as we wrap up the fourth quarter.
Yes.
Or going
Thanks,
into
Barb.
fourth quarter, I guess. All
Yes.
right. Take
Absolutely.
care.
You too.